Absolutely. And when I came to UVic, came as a business student, and I came into the UVic Scuba Club, and there's all these biologists, and I started to learn about the stuff that's underwater and how all these organisms are interacting. And it's true, absolutely. When you get exposed to that through diving, you start to think about what's going on. You start to really care about ocean-related issues and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have lots and lots of biology majors that come through to do the programs at UVic, and it's really fascinating to see them learn about all of these critters and all of the courses that they've learned. And now all of a sudden, it's like, wow, and they're telling me all the scientific names of all these critters and stuff that they've only seen pictures of in their textbooks. And so it's pretty cool to watch that happen. They're always very, very passionate about it, and they're always in good company as well. You've got a whole bunch of biology majors together, and they're able to nerd out together, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And your wife, Elisa, she's also a master instructor. And she does a scientific dive program, I know, and a number of people from UVic have taken it and they've gone through it. And you guys have found some kind of disturbing stuff. You've done some surveys in Brentwood Bay, I know, and you're finding things like lawnmowers and batteries underwater. And what do you think of all that?
Yeah, it's, again, once you are underwater and you see these things, you actually know what's going on. But for a lot of people that don't dive and, you just kind of think, hey, if I throw this off the edge of my boat, it's gone. I don't have to worry about it anymore. But it's definitely not gone. In areas where we're seeing a lot of people that are living on their vessels, we see a lot of derelict boats. And a lot of those derelict boats are sinking, which is exposing the oceans to sort of harmful contaminants, chemicals, things like that. But we have picked up countless batteries that have been underwater. As you mentioned, there was a lawnmower. There's huge sheets of metal. What else? There's a drill. There was a toaster oven, and all sorts of crazy stuff like this that most certainly do not belong underwater. And it's purely because people obviously they don't want to take it to get rid of it properly.
No, they're just too lazy.
Yeah.
And I did a dive out at Daphne Islet, which is not too far from Brentwood, and there was 2 or 3 very large marine batteries down there. Someone had thrown a toilet down there.
Yeah.
All sorts of crazy stuff that you just never think would be underwater, but people find a way to get rid of it, and it gets down there.
Yeah. We run sort of project-aware events. They're underwater and shoreline beach cleanups, and essentially we're sort of educating people on what can stay down there and what can't. So, for instance, you might find a bottle right underwater, and maybe it's been under there for a long time, and I've seen octopus inside of these bottles. So maybe it's somebody's home, and so in some cases we'll leave that stuff there if we don't think that it's doing any damage to the environment. But there are other things, definitely things like batteries, that just create ongoing issues, and so those are definitely the things that we're bringing up. Things like spark plugs. People use spark plugs as weights when they're fishing, and obviously those are not good for the environment either.
Absolutely. And we talked a lot about the cool things you can see in the cold water, and I know there's a few people out there that are probably poking around my blog, they're poking around the UVic scuba site, and they're curious, and they're thinking, how do I get involved with diving? How do I get certified?
Yeah, so the most common organization that diving is taught through here in Canada is PADI, the Professional Association of Diving Instructors. They are a worldwide organization that teaches people to dive, and we teach through PADI. And in addition to that, we actually teach through Vikes Recreation. And so essentially the open water courses, which is where you begin, essentially, we teach the programs at McKinnon Pool. The classroom is in the McKinnon building or the Carsa building. And then we head out into the open water. We're on a boat, and we do 4 open water dives out there as well.
Absolutely. And I was the president of the club for a long time at UVic, and very involved there. And it is always cool to see people that come in. You mentioned all the biology students that come in, and they've learned about this stuff for so many years, and they actually get to go to the ocean and see it live. And the club itself does a lot of cool events. We do trips all over the place. We do cheap charters and gear rentals, and really just try to make it affordable for students. So when people are getting certified, is there anything that they should watch out for? Anything that they should ask, both of themselves, am I ready to go diving, but also considerations for choosing a place to get certified?
Yeah, we get lots of questions with regards to getting certified. Some people want to know if they need to be able to swim. Well, do need to be able to swim 200 meters nonstop, but for the most part, that's really the only sort of swimming requirement. You need to be able to swim or float for 10 minutes, but most people could do that fairly easily. Otherwise, the material that Patty presents in the courses, the minimum age that you need in order to get certified is 10 years old, and so you can imagine this material is sort of designed to be presented in a way that can be understood by somebody that's as young as 10 years old. So the material is not difficult by any stretch. So essentially, it's very easy as long as you're able to swim and you're medically able to do so. There's a medical questionnaire that you need to be able to sort of answer.
What are the most common things that people might have an issue with on the medical form? What are the common boxes that get checked?
Some people had asthma when they were young. Sometimes people had tubes put in their ears when they were young. So it's because of the pressure associated with diving, ear issues tend to be sort of a big one. And of course, any respiratory issues as well. So like I say, asthma, things like that. Those can all cause potential issues, but for the most part, as long as you're careful with that stuff, sometimes we'll ask you to see a physician to make sure that you're okay to dive, but for the most part, people are usually okay.
So you do the course. I understand at UVic, it's usually about 4 nights. You start off in the classroom, then you go to the pool. Some of your courses are a little shorter. If there's not as many people in the courses, you can do it in 3 nights. And then you kind of take what you learned in the classroom, you apply it in the pool, and then you're ready to go in the ocean, right?
Yeah.
So after you go into the ocean, what is it like, sort of that first step of getting into the cold water? Because I know a lot of people come here and they are tropical divers and they've dove in their swimsuit and in their wetsuit before, but they've never done the dry suit thing. How do you find that teaching people?
Yeah, a lot of people do have some apprehensions about diving here in the cold water, but as you mentioned, we teach everybody in dry suits, and so anything sort of worth doing is sort of worth preparing for as well, and doing it properly. If I was going to climb Mount Everest, I'd make sure that I've got all the right equipment in order to make it happen, and so same thing with diving. So we teach people in the open water course how to dive in dry suits. So they're wearing fleece, essentially in a sack of air essentially underwater, and that keeps them nice and toasty underwater at all times of the year. And so for the most part, this sort of gets rid of any apprehensions about diving in the cold water. And really, it's not so much about the temperature of the water around here. It's really about the temperature outside of the water. So if I learn in a wetsuit and it's January, and I come out and I'm already cold, and now the temperature of the air is like 3 degrees or 2 degrees, and I throw in some wind, that's when it's cold, when I'm wearing a wetsuit. But in a dry suit, right, I can just take my dry suit off, I can put my jacket on, and now I'm nice and toasty warm, and so then I can get in for the second dive. And so, yeah, teaching people in dry suits it's possibly more difficult than learning with just a regular buoyancy compensating device. But in the end, I believe that people are better divers. Canadian divers are said to be among the best in the world because of the conditions that we're diving in. Sometimes the visibility is not that great, and because of the cold water, you're learning in a dry suit. And so when you learn buoyancy in a dry suit, you learn it very, very well. And so when we have divers that go into warmer waters, tropical waters, and they were just wearing a BCD, we get lots of people that say, wow, have you got, 50, 60 dives under your belt? And lots of people are like, no, I've only got 6. And that's because they're very well trained here. And so, yeah, it's more challenging, but it's also very rewarding, and it really helps with confidence as well. It really, once you overcome that, it's a great little confidence booster.
Absolutely, and I notice that a lot when I take people out, and a lot of people come to UVic, and they'll come from a tropical background, and they may have 50 or 60 dives, but they've never done the dry suit thing before, and they struggle a lot getting used to it. I think some people really takes them as many as 20 dry suit dives after being sort of a warm water diver to really get tuned into it. But when you learn, you learn it from the beginning, and you're constantly thinking about what you need to do with your buoyancy, dumping air, and adding air, because it is much more challenging here in the cold water.
Yeah, in a way, you could sort of liken it to teaching an old dog new tricks, right? It's somebody that comes, maybe they've got 40, 50 dives under their belt, but they've sort of learned a series of habits that they now have to relearn because it's different diving in a dry suit. And so we do have dry suit orientations that a warm water diver could come and take at just one evening in the pool, and that allows them to rent a dry suit essentially. But then it's getting out there into the open water. There's definitely a bit of a learning curve. Some people struggle with it, and some people don't. But yeah, as you say, after you've got 20, 30 dives, most people are very proficient divers.
Absolutely. And so thank you a lot for doing this today, Tyler. I really appreciate it. If anybody has any questions about you and your scientific diving and diving around here, where can they go?
Well, I own Rockfish Divers, and certainly just rockfishdivers.com. You can certainly find us there. However, we do run all the programs through Vikes Recreation as well, and so you can visit the just vikesrec.ca. You just go to aquatics and click on scuba, and all the various courses are there. We run programs through the summer, fall, and the winter terms, and so they're always there. Otherwise, people can certainly email me as well, and my email can be found on either one of those websites as well.
Right on. Thanks again, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you, Mitch.
Absolutely.